This week, we welcome Fleming Shi, Chief Technology Officer at Barracuda Networks, to discuss the hybrid workforce, addressing the challenges of work from anywhere. In the Leadership and Communications section, Federal Reserve Chairman says cyber risk a top threat to national economy. What good leaders do when replacing bad leaders, my 10 rules for work-life balance, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where intruders are going, but where they've been. 90-day look-back and complete network visibility across the data center, cloud, and device edge help security teams respond 84% faster with ExtraHop Reveal X network detection and response. Explore the interactive demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 213, recorded April 19th, 2021. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in sunny Colorado before it snows today. Joining me from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island is my first co-host, Mr. Paul Asadorian.
Hey, Matt, it's good to be here.
No snow in Rhode Island yet,
No
right?
snow.
I
rode my e-bike to work today. It's good.
Yeah,
I wasn't
nice.
freezing. The last time I took it was cold. a little too chilly.
And Jason's not in studio, which means he's joining us remotely. Mr. Albuquerque, welcome.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And Paul, you're looking good with that nice clean face, buddy. I love
Thanks.
Yeah,
As
he
our
looks so
viewers,
much younger.
I know, as our viewers know, I go through lots of different facial hair changes. And this time I decided clean shaven. And we'll see how long that lasts.
Through vacation, and then I bet it's done.
Exactly.
Do you want to stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly? Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher or our YouTube channel. Sign up for our mailing list, join our Discord server, and follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. Also, do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We just reviewed them, so there's a bunch of new ones coming, but we'll also review them monthly, and we'll reach out to you once we've approved your appearance. This segment is sponsored by Barracuda Networks. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Fleming Shi joined Barracuda Networks in 2004 as the founding engineer for the company's web security product offerings, helping to create the first version of Barracuda's message archiving product and paving the way for expansion into new content security product areas. As Chief Technology Officer, Fleming leads the company's threat research and innovation engineering teams in building future technology platforms to deliver continued success in their security and data protection products. He has more than 20 patents granted or pending in network and content security. Fleming, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you for having me. I'm in actually sunny Santa Cruz in the Bay Area. So still pretty warm right here.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Want to get outside soon. Yeah, but it's really nice over here. Yeah.
Just remember, whenever it rains in the Bay Area this time of year, 2 days later, it's snow in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. That's good. We've got the water storage, right? That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, we need the water. All right, so we're going to talk about work from anywhere. And I want to set this up a little bit. I mean, a year ago, we were talking about getting workers from on-premise to work from home. And with that came a lot of challenges for organizations of taking some of their on-prem systems and moving them into the cloud. Now that we're moving back into the office and probably being in this hybrid kind of style of on-prem and work from home, based on what we learned going remote, what issues, if any, are we going to have when we go back into this hybrid workforce?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, from what I've been studying, reading some stats, one of the stat basically talks about more than 50% of the organizations are going to probably allow uh, full-time, working from home scenario, which means other 50% will be coming in and out. And this is really not just flexible days, but flexible hours. If you think about how people slice up their workday, they could be spending time in the office and they go back home, right, and continue their work. The nice thing about that is really it's going to change the way we handle, our work, but more importantly, how do you actually keep their productivity and make sure the security is properly set up for their devices when they're using them. So I think coming back to the office, or I remember in March last year, people actually had a hard time sourcing laptops, getting laptops to people's homes quickly, right? Now the issue is maybe some people have laptops that's offered by their employer, but some of them could be using Brio own device, right? Their own devices. In many ways, I think it's in the future is less of a working from home, but more of a working from anywhere. So these devices plus all kinds of networks will be involved in your work infrastructure at that point, right? It's no longer like pre-pandemic, majority will be in the office. So you're thinking, I would say you have to think about all these different networks that's going to be associated with your workforce. So I think that is the number one challenge is how do you actually trust these networks? How do you make sure the user who's interacting with your SaaS applications, collaborating between your teams are actually safe, right? So this is where we really have to think about the posture, the security posture at the endpoint, the users, readiness for different kinds of attacks. I'll call out email, for example. Email is still the largest app really used by any employee for doing work at home or work from anywhere. So I think it's about bringing zero trust in 2021 into the workforce really quickly.
I agree. I think there were some great points in there, Fleming, that and kind of helped me shape how things really are today, right? It's not everyone working from home, everyone in the office, or even some hybrid. It's more about the hybridization of the devices, that some people could have some personal devices and some work devices, and they're accessing the same types of data. And I think zero trust in the context of that conversation is extremely important, because traditionally in IT security, we're like, either we manage that device or we don't. And it's more about the device. Now today, it's more about the users and the apps and the data, as Matt, likes to point out.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I mean, zero trust used to be just about the network layer, right? And when we think about the network now, it may not be in the control of the organization. The network is my home network because I'm working at home today. It's the corporate network because I'm in the office tomorrow. And then it's Starbucks or whichever coffee shop down the street. So the network is not that layer that I control. So when we think about zero trust, to Paul's point, I think we have to think more about app user data layers, not just the network layer, because that network layer, you don't have as many controls in these days than you did in the past.
Yeah, no, that's 100% dead on, Matt. I mean, we've become hyper individualized at this point, right? I mean, think about it, a little over a year ago, at that point we were innovating because, traditionally we wanted to influence society. And we took a step back on our heels and we had to adapt technology for the societal changes that got thrown at us, right? So now we've become hyper individualized. I mean, just look at some of the services we're doing now. Telemed, contactless payment, right? Virtual check-ins at hotels. Everything is that individualized experience that we now have to make sure we're securing, along with that flexible, scalable, and global type experience. We need to make sure that's all got a security umbrella over it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I think it's so. Yeah, I was gonna say, because I feel like it's an evolution. The virus, the pandemic, really helped us evolve, and this is what the effect of it. How we're connected, how we're using our applications. I think SaaS adoption is way up. You probably heard about the application, mobile app downloads are way up, right? So exactly like what you said. Yeah.
So when you think about this as a chief technology officer, right? Everybody knows Barracuda for the email stuff and some of your firewalling products because we've all heard or seen the ads, right? But as a chief technology officer, as we're going through this past year of pandemic, I mean, how has that shifted your thoughts into the types of offerings you now need to deliver to your customers to help them in this new world?
Definitely. I think you probably see one of our goals is to really improve security for the entire journey for our customer, always with them. And this part of it is really, we have to really understand how people are working. In the past, Barracuda, like you said, we have firewalls, we have VPN clients, but most people actually, when they work from home now, they don't necessarily have to use VPN to do their job. They're using SaaS applications. They're using single sign-on, to allow them to actually get in through their Azure AD to get into the application, which is really defined and sanctioned by the company. And having those access, and how do you actually policy manage the usage and permissions, and based on your network or your endpoint's posture is what we're trying to put together. So we really pushed really hard last year. Actually got into ZTNA. I will call it CloudGen Access. That's the actual product name. What it does is goes, like you said, Zero Trust used to be just network segmentation or overlay on top of existing network infrastructure. So you can have assets connecting to each other. But the Zero Trust in this context is about constantly monitoring, continuously monitoring the security posture of the endpoint of the user, where they are, geofence, use various different ways to make sure the user is securely accessing the SaaS applications you're giving to your employees. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the new product offerings, but it also ties into some of the things you've been doing on the application side, right? Again, traditional networking, email, and then you start looking at all the cloud adoption and all these different cloud platforms. We've seen a huge uptick, and we cover this in our other show that we did earlier today, Application Security Weekly. Now there's a whole new app attack vector, and the application security is now more important than ever.
Yep, definitely. So as we talked about, SaaS application adoption is going up. We're doing Zero Trust on the endpoint for the actual employees or users who are touching these apps. But if you think about the infrastructure behind these apps, they are going to get a lot of attention, because if you think about all the supply chain attacks you probably heard on the news, various different application infrastructures are potentially going to be exposed, because you have a large cloud adoption, public cloud migration sort of workload moving from your private data centers to public cloud. A lot of these adoption come along with risks. Some of these risks are completely, I would just say, developers could make mistakes, right? Sometimes it doesn't even have to be the production environment. It could be their development environment where they think they can have access from home so they can do their work better. But giving those public cloud adoption, and given the amount of complex services in public cloud, not every developer is going to understand how to securely utilize or configure their cloud setup so they can actually do their development work securely. So that actually could be a problem. So this is one of the reasons our cloud application security, really, I would say web application security goes beyond that. Just web application is about the actual app layer. But if you think about the infrastructure layer, the configuration, the postures you have to have in AWS, Azure, GCP, you need to make sure you have a constant watch over it. And that's really kind of two sides, right? So first of all, protecting the user at home, making sure they're secure, before they access the SaaS. Also protecting the folks who are offering SaaS, their infrastructure. If you're not careful, once it's infiltrated, it can be weaponized against others, right? If you think about supply chain attack, not necessarily, always related to let's just say a source code repository. It could be actually related to your production environment where you may have left a door open, right, or window open. in that situation. So those are all the things that Barracuda are offering, obviously, to support our customers and also our customers' vendors who are running these SaaS applications. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a huge growth area for everybody to really look at the application layer. You couple that with the user. Now you have some very interesting user application control, again, back into that zero trust model. But then again, these profiles then probably vary and change based on also where you're trying to access these applications from. And I think this is where some of the newer WAN technologies and some of the protections around that start to come into play. We've seen this big uptick in SASE technologies, right? That secure service edge. How has that changed the way you think about connectivity in the network?
Absolutely. So, as we talked about the constant security posture management, that's one thing, right? But if you think about SASE scenarios, it's about interconnecting branch offices and public cloud regions. So Barracuda actually offers a pretty awesome SD-WAN solution. It actually utilizes Microsoft Azure's backbone. And we actually deployed this, our devices, actually very natively within Azure to support your potential SD-WAN build-out. What that means is you can go from your SD-WAN core design to actually rolling out devices potentially in your branch office. It could also be, some industries are going to be very difficult to just always work from home, especially manufacturing, right? They just use manufacturing as example. Industrial IoT will still have to have security around them, especially robotics or automation, machinery, all those things. So if you think about SD-WAN, it goes beyond just interconnecting assets that is just purely software, but sometimes they're related to physical environments like manufacturing floors. So with that, it's beyond just providing a VPN connection, but it's also a security posture within that connection, managing the application quality, as well as measuring who is in and out of those flows, and also really kind of restrict the amount of access you can get to certain parts of your mesh in that SD-WAN. So generally, if you look at that, what we have really put together is connectivity with security for SD-WAN. We also added CloudGen access for devices at home. Obviously, the zero trust endpoint security solution to actually enable certain permissions and disable permissions based on your security posture, right? So if you look at all these CloudGen solutions we add together, it's a full SASE offering.
Yeah, and I mean that ecosystem is so important right now. I mean, I think about the yin and the yang between, the push-pull between the business and security right now, right? And the business wants, an environment that can support a diverse, distributed, hyper-individualized type experience where, for the remote workforce, especially for those organizations are thinking about getting rid of some of their leases, getting rid of their brick and mortar, really having that true work from anywhere type environment. They're trying to push that campus environment user experience out to the periphery. Those services need to come to you, right? And now these organizations are seeing this really distributed network and just having those tools available, because let's face it, security isn't always at the upfront strategic table, right? We want to be, but a lot of times the business is making decisions, right? And we come in on the tail end of it. Having these tools available are so important these days to be able to make sure we're securing this diverse and, again, distributed network.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, one of the stats I came to know is about 30% plus of the survey actually said these 30% of the folks will actually reduce the office footprint, just like you said, right? So that means there will be definitely hybrid workforce. And sometimes people will share office space. So some people coming on Monday, but same space. So they're reducing their, like you mentioned, reducing their lease. Yes.
Yeah. But that experience can't change, right? The business does not want the experience to change, whether you're on campus, off campus, in a Starbucks, or in a hotel.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So just since you touched on Starbucks, for example, if you're in Starbucks environment, if there is a trust issue on that particular Wi-Fi, something like zero trust, like CloudGen Access, will disable certain critical access to certain data sets, right? So if you think about it that way, there are some security, enforcements, but genuinely, we want to make sure the security is there first, while you can still do your job. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't work from Starbucks, but perhaps you have to you will probably be limited to certain type of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's a beautiful thing, because that's a very easy conversation that you're enabling me to have with my other business unit leaders, because now collaboratively we can sit down and say, what's the highest risk? What are the controls we want to put in play? Then the expectation is there across the board, and you have support from all those other business unit leaders, right? So we can have an intelligent conversation on how we want to implement those controls.
And that's a moving target. Absolutely. And a conversation that constantly needs to happen as we roll out new applications. Yep. Sometimes these are native applications, SaaS applications. Sometimes they're on premises. Sometimes they're this mix, right? As I explore all the things that Office 365 can do, I'm like, anyone can stand up an application and like, wait, now I got to know what data they're accessing, who should have access to it. And now, based on Fleming, which you described, right, is in what context should they have access to this or not?
Exactly. And if you think about all this, all comes around, right? Because when you have workforce that's working hybrid or work anywhere, you don't want them to become the entry point to eventually get into your network or into your application security infrastructure, right? Application infrastructure. So that prevents potential weaponization of your environment, your users, could be your C staff, right? So you think about it. Security, basically, it's a whole circle, really. Protecting them, how they use their apps, preventing them from getting become the entry point and the place where do the island hopping or lateral movement into your infrastructure. Because it's not just executive developers; just is the same way, right? If they get into developer systems, they could actually uncover credentials or tokens or access keys to your cloud environment, if you think about it that way. So all these things that all come together, we have to think about it that way. Yeah.
Now, we talked application, we talked user, we talked the network layer. The only thing we didn't talk about is data. What are you guys doing in the data space these days?
Great. I think there's still a little bit of stealth, but I can talk about it a little bit, because you want to know where your data lives and what kind of data lives where, right? So when you have a target on your data, as in, okay, so this sensitive data should be only shared using this sanctioned file share service, for example, right? So you can actually monitor and really give yourself a report on where your data lives. This is something we're building coming soon, I would say. But the nice thing about this is it utilizes APIs to interact with various different SaaS applications. So we don't have to always sit traditionally in the early days when we did our products, usually it's a layer 7, like a relay, like a bump in a wire, right? So today we don't have to do that. Everything can be done through APIs, interacting with your applications and identifying where the data lives. So then there are signals you can catch, and just kind of like an event in your system, like a notify or some type of event in the system, but in a SaaS, you will be then triggering a sort of a scan or inspection of the data. So there's a lot to come from that perspective. Also, of course, we have data protection from backup perspective, right? That's one thing we always have been doing really well. So that's also important, especially for ransomware attacks, right? So you want to actually be ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, your data protection products have always been out there as a way to prepare yourself in case of a ransomware attack. You need that resiliency component. But as we start to think about the triad that I always go back to, app, user, data, understanding where your data is, understanding the interrelation of data to the application, to the user access, is like that next nirvana layer that I think we're going to see a lot more innovation in over the years, because you've got a lot of the other pieces in place. You bring that data layer component in, now you start to really provide, I think, some really great value to say, wait a minute, that I don't recognize that user or that user on that application. So why are they trying to access this data? When we can control that better, we definitely provide the kind of the next level of security in from a protection standpoint.
Absolutely. It's about users and data and your infrastructure. Everything that you just mentioned is something that we want to make sure we protect from all angles. That's kind of the future. Yeah.
Yes. Fleming, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you guys more in the future, especially coming back to work. Let's see how 2021 works out. But if it's a hybrid, well, we got the solutions and technology ready for our customers. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's always good to get caught up on all the other things that Barracuda is doing. Like I said, we all know you from other commercials around the network and the email side, but you guys have made a lot of progress in 2021. Yeah. To learn more about, perfect. Thank you, Fleming. To learn more about how Barracuda Networks can solve your work from anywhere challenges, please visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.